everyone. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We are your hosts, Southborough Youth and Family Services. My name is Sarah Castle. I am the Director of Youth and Family Services. And with me this morning, I have Megan Island, who's our Assistant Director. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning.
We have Shannon Knyman, who is our Program Coordinator. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Sarah.
And we are so excited to welcome Sabrina Rebecky and Matt Berry, who are both licensed mental health counselors from the Student Development and Counseling Center at WPI. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. Let's start our conversation with a water bottle toast.
Yep.
Oh, iced coffee. Iced coffee. That works. That works. We do need to hydrate on days like today.
Yeah, I have these water bottle ice cubes in here. I'm drinking water and they're like, I'm really nervous it's gonna like poke me in the nose because they don't fit in the cup right.
Should I have been
Coffee talk hazard. Matt, what do you have to drink this morning?
This is a medium iced coffee with
Oh, wonderful.
oat milk and 2 mocha swirl.
Nice.
Get real specific.
Excellent. Excellent. Delicious. And how about you, Sabrina? Are you having hot coffee? I see
Oh,
it.
no. I just have the old water in the coffee mug.
Nice. Nice. That's great. That's great. It's far too hot to be drinking hot coffee. So
Entirely
iced coffee and water it is. What is everybody doing to stay cool? Did anybody, especially this past weekend, it was quite hot. Anybody? Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
No, I was saying it was hot. My
Oh.
son, my almost 13-year-old had a game, a soccer game on
Cool.
Sunday afternoon
Oh no.
at 1 p.m.
Oh,
Perfect timing.
And, yep. And there were 10 kids on the team, which means that 10 didn't show up. You're supposed to have 11 on the field. And their coach said, let's go for it. Let's do it. So they had no subs.
Oh,
And one boy tripped. He didn't get hurt. He tripped and he fell on the ground. And you could tell just by his like face and his, that he was like, I'm just going to die right here. Don't move me. I've decided to die.
Better
Then
than
he died.
Oh, so hot. Oh my
So
God.
how much weight did your son lose on Sunday? Mhm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he got ice cream after.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I could picture him just like rubbing the ice cream all over himself instead of eating it. Oh goodness. I went out and we have a boat. Now before you get excited and impressed, it's an inflatable boat with a motor. So it's not quite like we're not on a yacht or anything like that. It's not fancy, but it does have a trolling motor on it. And we've got 2 very active little boys who love to sort of combine the fact that we're on a boat and like we're also on our trampoline at home because it's inflatable and bouncy. They like to jump up and down while they're in it, which is extra exciting. But I got pretty sunburnt while I was out there despite putting sunblock on and everything. But it was nice on the water. It wasn't quite so hot, I guess, because there was a nice breeze. But Matt and Sabrina, did you guys do anything exciting over the weekend to try to stay cool, or were you just in the AC for the most part?
More in the AC than not. The nice thing this weekend was my parents I have 2 kids. One is turning 5 this month. I have a 2-year-old as well. My parents took the almost 5-year-old for the weekend as a little pre-birthday fun outing. So we were having an easier time of it. We mostly stayed in the AC though.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
I've also got two littles. I've got a 7-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. And it was a combo of sprinklers and popsicles and AC and more sprinklers and more popsicles. And,
Yep.
you know.
Did you guys also just wipe the popsicles all over your body. Just
Yeah,
ice
it's like a
cream.
standing in the sprinkler, make sure, you know.
We do that daily, hot or cold. So.
Oh, okay. That's just like a normal occurrence. Nice, nice. Oh, that's great. My son's school actually called a half day today, which is funny because
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
visit from
Yep.
facilities.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So let's see. What was I just about to say? I got distracted by facilities walking into the room.
Double booked. Do you have a different guest?
Yeah, should we invite him in? Like, do you want
Yeah.
to talk about psychosocial development of young adults, Ron? He'll be like, I'll come back later, guys.
Oh, I didn't.
Well, let's segue then to our topic, because viewers may recall that we had been attempting to do a full series on psychosocial development at different stages of life. So to date, we had been able to do toddlers. We did one about school-age children, and we also did one about adolescents, not necessarily in that order, because it was challenging at times to find a guest who felt really comfortable talking about that. We were especially interested in having someone on about young adults, which is what we're here to talk about today. And we're especially interested in that because we have found in our work here, but also in talking with others, that young adults tend to be specifically challenging to support because of their independence, the fact that they're technically adults, and yet they experience some challenges at that age, which can be really challenging, I guess is the best way to put it. So before we dive into that age group more specifically, Matt, do you prefer Matthew? I should have asked you
don't
this.
really have a preference, and that's fine.
You don't. Matt is fine. Okay. All right. So Matt and Sabrina, would you please tell us a little bit more about yourselves and about the work that you do over at the Student Development and Counseling Center at WPI?
Matt, go for it. You can go first.
I'm gonna go first. All right.
Yeah.
So I said my name is Matt Barry. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I am originally from Connecticut. I've been in Massachusetts basically since grad school. I came up for grad school and never left. I married, 2 kids, as I mentioned earlier, and I have been in one role or another at this Student Development and Counseling Center since I was a grad student. I did my internship here. And when I finished my degree, there was an outreach coordinator position that opened. I stepped into that. It was only a part clinical role, then moved into a clinical role, and then assistant director, and here I am. And our center, it's the counseling center for WPI, free confidential counseling services to any student. That includes undergraduate and graduate students. It does not include university employees or alumni. We do individual counseling. We do a very small amount of couples counseling. We do group counseling. That's really beefed up over the past, I would say, 4 to 5 years. We really created a robust groups program. And we do a lot of outreach programming, psychoeducation, stuff like that, on a variety of topics related to mental health.
And how about you, Sabrina?
Yeah, so I'm Sabrina Rebecky. I am also a licensed mental health counselor. Oddly, my story is going to sound a bit similar to Matt's. I'm also from Connecticut. I came to Massachusetts in grad school, and I've stayed in Massachusetts since. I also started here. I interned here and wound up staying here at WPI. Matt and I have both been here for close to 10 years, working together kind of here, which is interesting. My partner is, I've got 2 little kids, like I mentioned. My partner is a high school teacher actually at Framingham High School. So we talk a lot about that adolescent and that transition to young adulthood in my home. I think another piece just about a little bit how we function here and just our kind of modality, our therapy modality. We do provide short-term counseling, mostly individual. many, not all of our clinicians, but we really come from a background of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy is sort of our baseline. Most of all of us kind of take that front, but we throw in definitely other modalities kind of leaning in there as needed, but very person-centered, very client-centered kind of approach in that way. And so much of our work is really talking and helping students navigate what it means to transition into adulthood and what that looks like for them with all their stuff, right? We've all got it. We've all got stuff. So how do we hold that? How do we manage what that looks like? And that's sort of what we do.
Yeah, and we don't have any hard session caps. Students can meet with us kind of as much as they want, but just with our the demand for services, we wind up kind of maxing out at someone can see us as much as every week if they do 25-minute sessions, or every other week if they do closer to hour sessions. That's about what we can accommodate at maximum.
That's great. So before Shannon asks her next question, I failed to revisit what psychosocial development means. And to be honest with you, maybe Matt and Sabrina, you're in the same boat. We had to go back to our old textbooks and also Google what psychosocial development is, because it's not something that is a term just for people who are watching that we use that often. But really what we're talking about here is there's different types of development. Physically we develop in different ways. So here we're talking about the development of personality. We're talking about the development of social attitudes and skills, how we relate to other people, what our needs are as individuals in terms of relationships and socially. And so as we've been talking in this series, we've been talking about socially, what are our needs from when we're real little all the way up through our adulthood.
And then if you Google, yet again, if you hit Google, what you're going to find is that we're making this up as we go along, because Dr. Erickson, like, God rest your soul, man, did not parse out these stages the way that we did. We just thought, so if you look, if you're studying it, they're going to say adulthood. But for today's conversation, we wanted to talk about young adults. So today we're talking about like 18 to 25-year-olds, because it's a really unique time. It's much different from adulthood. So that's what I was going to ask you guys. What makes this so unique? What's unique about this age group?
Well, I mean, you say unique, and as you mentioned, sort of the theory didn't carve out all of the kind of developmental stages we recognize today. And I think it is kind of historically bound and societally, contextually bound, where, for a long time in the world, there was like childhood and adulthood, and you didn't really need more categories. And the like responsibilities and roles a person would play in their community, like that was it. Like you didn't really need more categories. And as time and society has shifted, now we do have this group, this chunk of years, what we might call like young adulthood, emerging adulthood, where people have, developmentally some of the tasks they're taking on are like adult tasks, but usually there's not financial independence, usually there's not housing independence, there's usually marriage and childbearing hasn't really come into play yet. So it's this kind of stage that got added, and it is, I think there's a lot of push-pull, a lot of ambivalence about independence versus dependence on a family of origin, and navigating that. I think part of that, it's economically driven. How do you be independent when you financially really can't be yet, depending on what your path is?
One of the other components that makes this part of this young adulthood or this transitional age unique is there is this involvement of parents, but it's this separation between parent and individual, right? And trying to, like Matt was saying, like if there's financial dependence or housing dependence, trying to navigate that and figure out what that looks like. On top of these folks are, finding their identities, maybe exploring their identities, navigating what they want, their values, their needs. their relationships. We happen to work at a college, so we have the privilege of our students coming here and really also being able to connect with people from all over the state, all over the country, all over the world. So also there's this part of like, oh, I'm now also exploring what other cultures, societal norms, belief systems might be. That might be very different from their parents or their home structure that they grew up in. And I think that there's a tension that can really develop there.
Even from their same age peers who maybe didn't go to college.
Yeah.
Be a very different experience. Some of the same developmental tasks happening, but very different kind of roads through it.
That's a good point. Yeah, because, you know, we are talking about this age group in general. And so, you know, many young adults end up going to college and many don't. So a lot of these things, they may look a little different, but a lot of them, you know, a lot of what they're experiencing is similar in nature.
One of the things we've noticed, oh, I'm sorry,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
interrupt. Oh, I was like, I think one of the things that we've noticed as in this sort of transitional, like finding their independence, if you will, you know, also really acknowledging that for a lot of this generation coming into this emerging adulthood, you know, they've been protected in many ways. And this like drop in, whether it's in college or whether it's they're entering into the workforce right out of high school, this drop into like, oh, I have responsibilities. I have things that I've maybe never had to do for myself. Make that doctor's appointment, call the dentist or whatever it might be, right? These sort of pivotal things that they maybe have not done, and even maybe to the larger scale as well, of course, but there's a lot of uncomfortableness that happens, I think, in this stage.
That's actually a good segue into what I was about to ask Sabrina, which is, you know, we see a lot of young adults and we talk to a lot of parents of young adults about them struggling. And so we're wondering, why can the stage be difficult for people at this age?
Sabrina, you want to go first? Or?
Oh, you can go for it.
Okay. So, I mean, for a ton of reasons. And I do want to say every phase of life can be difficult, all in their own way. So I don't know that it's specifically more difficult. It's just sort of like what the difficulties are. But I do think there is a lot that has to do with that, wanting more independence, but also maybe feeling challenged by some of what taking that on means in terms of some of the responsibilities, some of the tasks, especially, and maybe, you know, our experience is biased. So we work not just at a college, but at a science and engineering college. And there's a lot of students who are used to success, especially academically. And I think a lot of times get kind of set with a mentality of like, you have to do things the right way. And there's not, so it feels like there's not latitude to do the trial and error thing, to like figure things out by making mistakes. And so there can be a lot of, I think, anxiety now when there is like kind of no choice but to do some trial and error, to try something with no guarantee it's going to go right. And that's, that can be a bit paralyzing depending on the person. So there's that. I think at this age, you know, it starts a little younger for some, a little older for others, but navigating romantic and sexual relationships a lot of time for the first time, especially now, you know, again, at a college with the bounds of, is this going to be a temporary thing? Am I meeting like a lifelong partner here? Or what if we move different directions? What if nobody wants to be with me? All sorts of stuff that comes up at this age range. I think there's thinking about career, like what do I want to do in the world? What are my values? What's important to me? Are they the same as the ones I was raised with and told were important? Or are they maybe different from that? A whole lot of substances can really come into play here. That can start young, that can start in adolescence, but we see it certainly playing out at this age range as well. Now, what are some of the ones I'm missing?
Let me say, kind of tying into something, and this is definitely not like my or our field of expertise, but from a really kind of biological space, right? Thinking about our brains right in this 18 to 25 kind of years, you know, our brains they're kind of getting stuck in their ways, if you will, and that can be hard to sort of navigate. How do I navigate emotions that are coming up that maybe I've never had to experience before, or I have experienced before, but they weren't safe for some reason or another. And now I'm in a place where maybe I can explore them, or I have to figure out how to navigate and manage them, right? So we can also, for many students or many kind of young adults, this age range is also when a lot of like mental health concerns can start to arise. Some of those more severe mental health concerns can start to emerge for some, right, during this space. So I think adds into that, right? It layers into what can make this really challenging, and this time period challenging for young adults.
Yeah, I like what you said, Sabrina, about like there may be things the person experienced in their younger life, in their household, that this is the first chance to step away and view with any distance. And it's like, oh, some stuff I went through isn't normal. And there can be a lot of like perspective shift, I think, in this age.
Yeah, I liked your point, Matt, that, you know, every stage has its difficulties. And at the same time, it feels like through the pandemic, this age group was particularly affected. And we were wondering if you had any thoughts on what was going on, why?
A couple, yeah. So, you know, as we were saying, one of the things here is this gaining independence, sort of moving away from kind of just family as the primary social ties and stuff like that, and being quarantined at home really makes that a lot harder. People are still connecting electronically and things like that, which is not nothing, but it's also not the same. And I think that is experienced as a loss, kind of regardless of expectation. But I think I want to layer on here also the fact that culturally, societally, I think a lot of young people can know the expectation from media and from the discourse of like, these years are supposed to be like the, if not wild, it's sort of like the memory making is the things that people call back to, oh, when I was in college or when I was 20 or stuff like that. And I think there's a sense of loss relative to an expectation here. And a sense of failure. I'm supposed to have this, I'm missing out on it. So there's loss, there's grief that's really cooked into what people are going through right now.
Matt used this sort of emotion, and I think it's really fitting. I think across the board, seeing this, but for this age group, this layered in component of grief, like this universal grief of, again, we have the privilege of working at college, so a good chunk of our work has been like laying with our incoming, you know, our freshman year, our first year students, like this supposed experience of meeting people in their dorms and connecting with activities and kind of finding their group, right? Their people. They weren't really able to do that in the same sort of way. And in times, not at all able to do that, right? We kind of all had to pull together. And on the other end, right, thinking about our students who were graduating and sort of this loss of their senior year, right? Like what my senior year was supposed to be. And I would imagine for students who are, you know, graduating high school, right, in that same, probably experiencing some really similar feelings to that I think for this age group has exacerbated that grief, that loss has layered in there.
And I think there is like privilege plays into this a little bit, because like not everybody was planning on having a senior year of college and a graduation, right? For some people that was never going to be part of the picture, and there's a little bit like maybe, you know, Crimea River kind of thing that happens. But if for anybody, if there was an expectation they're going to experience something, to not have that is experienced as a loss.
Right. I like to just highlight too that for parents, actually, I don't want to steal Megan's question, but that I think, you know, we get asked the question a lot about, is this normal? And at each of these stages, and we're talking today about young adulthood, but that it's not just that emerging adults, young adults want or like socializing or are craving more intimate relationships, perhaps, but that this is part of their development. It's part of their identity, and that it's not just they're disappointed, but that this is what they're supposed to be doing at this age this stage in their life. And so there's a real sort of, whether they're aware of it or not, but sort of a biological component here that they're really craving this this type of experience in their life.
Yeah, and I think so much of these was, even if I'm not necessarily talking about physical life endangering when I say risk here, but that some of the passing through these stages involves like taking on certain risks, risking rejection, risking stuff like that. And the experience of the pandemic has really pushed a risk aversion, right? Not even don't go out and meet people, don't even breathe the same air as them. And I think it at least delays some of the development here.
Sarah kind of already touched on this, that we a lot of times parents ask us, what's typical, what's not typical at all different stages. And so we're wondering, is this still an issue at this stage of life? Should parents still be asking that question? And, when is behavior problematic for young adults, and when should parents be worried, and when should they support their young adults?
So I tend to think of normal as something that applies to like an aggregate, right? If you look at all the people in the world and you kind of bell curve it out, there's something that looks like normal, but it's not about an individual. And so what is normal is that there is big variation amongst people at every age group. And not everything that doesn't line up with that sort of like mean, median, average experience is problematic necessarily. There's allowed to be a lot of diversity of experience. So we tend to look at least for kind of our services, benchmarks like, is whatever's going on interfering with a person's ability to function, to do the basic things they want to do day to day? Is it impacting their safety, right? Are they having urges of doing harm to themselves or other people, or ending their own life? We also look at, is what's going on for them having a ripple effect? Is it having negative impacts on the people around them? That's probably something where right, we're wanting to have some sort of intervention in some way. And I would add to it, and this can be kind of invisible, especially if someone's not really opening up, but subjectively, like what are they distressed, right? Are they feeling sad all the time, angry all the time, worried all the time? It may not be showing up as issues in functioning or safety, but they might be feeling miserable, and that's probably worth looking at as well. When they're ready to, when they want to.
We do get calls from parents like, I'm really worried about my student, and we haven't talked to them in 2 weeks, and we used to talk every single day or something like that. And I'm like, okay, have you kept calling them? Like, let's reach out, right? So this idea of like, has something shifted, right? Has there been a change, a noticeable change in how they've typically, right, been functioning? And that might be hard to parcel out, especially for parents, and thinking about it, knowing that this age and coming, there can be a lot of just like, right, finding yourself, figuring out who am I. And so there might be some drastic changes that these folks might do that might, to parents, be like, this is, whoa, something is wrong. But for the student, right, they might be like, I'm fine. Like, I'm great, I'm good. Yeah, like I'm struggling, but I'm doing just fine in that. So I don't, yeah, like normal, I think is such a hard word to sit with. I think it'd be more if I could, and I do, say to parents, figuring out what normal is for your child, right? Because that might be totally different from someone else's child. And having that sense of understanding, so then you can gauge, right? Then you do have that understanding of like, oh, okay, something has really drastically shifted. So it does require us as parents, I'm speaking as a parent, right? It requires us to maybe put our own expectations, our own wants, our own desires to the side, right? And say like, all right, that's my stuff. What's my kiddo want here? What's their like? And I think the more we can do that and lean into that support, lean into that, like, I'm here, like, you go explore, you do your thing, and know I'm your safe space to come back to, I think can be extraordinarily helpful for our young adults during this time.
That's great.
I think something that makes that difficult I think for the young adults and for their parents, I think there's a sense, a worry that the stakes are really high, right? Like if they're in college, college is expensive. What if someone cost themselves an opportunity professionally? What if, and like we know mistakes have to be part of this process. It's a normal part of development, but the mistakes can feel really scary. What if the cost of the mistake is high? And I think it's hard for the young people sometimes to want to take those risks. And it's hard for the parents to feel like, how can I just stand by when this person is jeopardizing equity?
Yeah. And again, I would say, I'm thinking about all young people, whether they're in college or elsewhere. I think you're absolutely right that the stakes are really high because, you know, we're talking about these pressures of like, what if that was the one that got away, you know, that was the person I was supposed to marry, or, you know, professional development is happening a lot at this stage. What if I chose the wrong career or the wrong path to go on? So it just definitely feels higher stakes, higher pressure.
And we know with some years and some distance, if you pick the wrong career, you're not locked into it for life. You can get to a new one. But it feels for a lot of these people, I'm setting the trajectory for the rest of my life. I have to know not just what my first job after graduation, but what's that gonna lead to. And
Right. Yeah.
it's that can be really crushing.
Right.
From a development kind of perspective, a lot of times or oftentimes our work is like helping that student acknowledge and sit with like flexibility, right? Of like, yeah, you might have to pivot and there might be consequences, if you will, or losses to navigate, like, sure, but that's okay. We can do that. And how can we, you know, practice what that looks like? And we, you know, we can sit in the scary, this doesn't feel right, oh no, we can do that. And here's how, and helping kind of build those tools. And that's a big part. I think that's a huge part of this developmental kind of piece that's happening during these years.
Right. Well, awesome conversation. I given that our time is up for today, I'd like to just conclude by saying, I know it went by so fast, right? Yeah. And you were all nervous. No, nobody was nervous. We were all comfortable. I just would like to conclude by saying, you know, and I feel like this is something we've said on the show before, but that challenges, difficult emotions, stress are all part of our human experience at every stage. And you guys very nicely highlighted some of the things that might be, so if it's part of human experience, when do we need to potentially reach out for help? And we were talking about a person's functioning. Are they able to succeed at school, at work, in relationships? Is there a ripple effect that's happening? Are we, you know, are relationships suffering as a result, both, you know, personal and professional relationships? We also talked about a person's safety. We talked about quality of life. You know, maybe they are being successful in various areas, but are they really unhappy and really having difficulty despite that? So all of those things are really important. And also what Sabrina was talking about with changes in behavior for your particular family member. So, you know, we really, as parents, need to try, and as family members need to try to fight the urge to compare our family members to other people in the same sort of developmental stage, but rather take a look. If we see a behavior change in our family member, that might be a good reason to be checking in on them and seeing how we might be able to support them. So for students who are at WPI, Sabrina and Matt are incredible resources for you guys. I feel confident about that. For anybody who's watching who is a Southborough resident, if you have a young person or even just any family member who is in need of help, please feel free to reach out to us. We offer short-term support here as well, but we also offer a lot of referral support to folks so that they can get set up with some longer-term support if that's what's needed. I'd love to just mention what we're doing next week. We haven't told people this yet, but we are hoping, well, not hoping, we're planning to take a break from Coffee Talk for the summer. So we've got 2 more episodes happening in the month of May. So next week on the 15th, we're welcoming, now Shannon, you may need to say her name because I get it wrong every time.
So next week we have Dr. Beryl Bayrak coming on.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to
yes.
butcher her name, so. But she specializes in parent-infant mental health and newborn behavioral observations. So she's going to round out our series on psychosocial development. So we're going from young adult, emerging adult to infancy. See? Cohesive, right?
Well, it calls me back first.
Careful with some of the risk taking, they'll wind up with a very relevant episode.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Sabrina Rebecky and Matt Berry from WPI's Counseling Center, thank you guys so much for being on today. It was really informative, and we hope people found it helpful. And I know the students at WPI are very lucky to have you, the whole community, I'm sure.
Such a pleasure to be here this morning. Have us back again sometime.
Oh, good.
Oh, I know, definitely. We'd love to come back if you'd like to chat some more. We'd love to chat. We're always up for it. Thank you for having us.
Great. Well, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.